speaker for the next session is Dr. Davis Robinson. Dr. Robinson is a SHRM certified professional and is a national speaker, author, educator, and learning professional with over 20 years experience of organization development and training and development experience. Dr. Robinson has worked in leadership roles in finance, retail, government, sales, higher education, healthcare, insurance, and automotive manufacturing industries. He is a native of Louisville, Kentucky, and received his doctorate and master's degrees from the University of Louisville and bachelor's from Western Kentucky University. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Robinson.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that introduction, everyone. Thank you for that round of applause. I really appreciate it. And before I start today, I do want to let you know that though this session is being pre-recorded, I will still be live to chat with you throughout the session for any questions that you may have. And once again, I am very, very, very excited to be a part of this conference with you. And I do want to give a shout out for Erin. She has been perfect all through this whole process. So shout out to you, Erin. I appreciate that. And the reason why I'm excited about this is because we get to talk about something that's been talked about for the last 15 years. And you know, even though that we wish that we could be there together with each other, but we can't because of COVID, let's do me a favor. Everyone's on the count of three, I want you to just show your contempt of COVID by thumbs down, boo, or whatever it may be. All right. On the count of three. 1, 2, 3. Boo. COVID, boo, COVID, boo, COVID, because you messed everything up. So again, I'm really happy you're here. And I wonder if the reason why you're here, because this title kind of caught your attention. You may have been thinking to yourself, well, employment engagement, I've heard of that. But what's this employment engagement thing? Is this something as an HR professional that I should be aware of? Is this something that's very new in the literature research? Is it something that we need to be thinking about as HR professionals? Well, you can, but those aren't the real reasons why of where this employment engagement came from. It came from my hypothesis that I have, and I'll talk to you a lot more about it as we go through today. And it is based on my observation. My question is, and really the kind of the food of thought that I want you all to have here as I go through this presentation with you over the next 60 minutes is, are my organization's employment engagement strategies really strategies for engagement, or are they strategies to keep employees happy, complacent, satisfied, and keeping them from leaving? That's the one thing I want you to keep in the back of your mind, because I'm going to continue to come back to this thing of, are we really trying to keep our associates, our employees happy, complacent, satisfied, or keeping them from leaving? Because we all know what happens when an employee leaves. We have to think about the recruiting costs. We have to think about the time and effort for recruiting. We have to think about the amount of time for retraining. We also have to think about the dollars that are lost because we have to retrain individuals. We also have to think about, well, how does this impact the team? How does this impact the teamwork? How long are we going to have to take to get this person skilled up in understanding the organization's culture? And so that's where kind of this thing of employment engagement came from, or my hypothesis, because again, the question is, are your organization's employee engagement strategies really strategies to engage their employees, or is it really to keep them happy, complacent, and satisfied? Going to keep coming back to that one little description, because that is your food for thought today. And to kind of get us going and kind of get us started here, I want to show you a couple of videos, and well, a couple of commercials. And they're commercials of products that you probably use, probably even have before. And on this first one, it's called "Here's to the Shot Takers." And when you look at this video or this commercial, I want you to look at the number that is presented. And when you see that number, I want you to think about, well, how did that make you feel, or what were you thinking about as an HR professional? And again, this is called Here's to the Shot Takers. Yeah, here's to the shot takers. And I told you before, I said, this may be one of those products that you've had before, and so hopefully it was nothing that you remember from last night. But as an HR professional, when you saw that number, almost 72,000 employees or 72,000 people are complaining about their job. If you saw that number, if you knew that number was true in your organization, let's say if you work in an organization of 10,000 individuals, and you knew that 2,000 of them were complaining about their job, as an HR professional, why would that impact you? How would it affect you? What would you be thinking about? And when you saw that number, you probably said, wow, that's a lot of people. But then it said only 48 people are taking their shot. We have that person who's leaving. So that person may not be complacent, satisfied. We probably did not do all that we can do as an as an HR department to keep that employee. So 71,000. The reason why it should ring true to you is because if you have people complaining about their job, we have to find a way to not have them complain. And one of the ways in which we can do that is by our engagement strategies, right? Okay. This next one, again, it's a commercial of one of the products you've seen before, probably you even have. And what I want you to do on this one, I want you to get out a piece of paper and a pen on this one, because I want you to focus on a couple of things. We just talked about, the employee who just left, those who are complaining about their job. And now I want you to look at this video regarding some of the interventions or some of the activities that organizations put in place to keep their employees. I want to see if you can identify at least two of those. All right. And here it goes. This is called, not Here's to the Shot Takers, but this one is called, I forgot what this one is called. But anyway, it's a commercial for you, and I hope you enjoy it.
Employee of the Year, Anna.
All right, I'm going to stop that again. I'm going to stop that again because I want you to be able to look at this a couple of times. All right, and see if you can identify, because I'm going to play it one more time and then I'm going to stop it and go frame by frame to see if you were able to identify some of those engagement strategies.
Employee of the Year, Anna.
Yeah, it goes by pretty quick. Goes by pretty quick. So let's go back to this. First of all,
Employee of the Year.
Here we go. Here's the first one I captured. If you all identify this one, give yourself 1 point. There is a rewards and recognition program in this organization, right? Because Anna received the Employer of the Year. What else do you see here? What else kind of captures your attention? If you identify leadership, seasoned leadership, I would presume this person is a role of leadership. They're at the head of the table. You can glance out and see the nice skyscrapers there. So you have leadership available. What else do you have there? You also have networks. You have friends. You have relationships in there. You have this one individual over here, okay? You have her, and then you have this individual right here. All right, so you got those networks. And then what about as we move forward with this?
Anna.
You have other networkers. You have relationships within there. Outside of this one guy right here, these two guys, right? These two guys right here, over to her left, this guy right here, and this guy right here, right? He just can't put his food down. He's not going to clap for he's not going to clap for anything. But everyone else is clapping for Anna because Anna received this, the Employee of the Year recognition award. Okay, so let's go ahead and move forward to what we have here next as far as what we see on this video. So let's go back to that. Did you see her face? After she got this reward, her face was still kind of like what it's looking at right now, right? It's kind of like, really, what am I doing here? I just got this award, but you would think that she would be a lot more happier. Something else that I see here, probably as a perk, she has an office, and believe me, an office is prime right now because I came out of an organization that was a flat organization, open environment, and there were no doors anywhere, no cubes. It was just an open environment. So maybe she even has a door. And you saw what she wrote down. What she wrote down was, start my dream company. Start my dream company. So when you go back and you think about Anna and what she did, getting this reward and the look on her face, what's wrong? We had food. You can't underestimate the value of food, ladies and gentlemen. There was food there. She had relationships, other than those two guys. There was leadership there. There was a reward and recognition. And let's even say she had a real nice pen. But beside all of that, she was still leaving. So that's the reason why I go back to that food for thought. Are my organization's employment engagement strategies really strategies to engage their employees or to keep them happy, complacent, and satisfied? Now, in no way am I suggesting to you that employment engagement interventions and strategies are not useful and they're not valued. According to SHRM looked at the impact of employee recognition programs according to HR professionals. And of those that they surveyed, 83% of them said that employee recognition programs have a positive impact on employment engagement. 82% of them said it increases employee happiness. 81% of them said it adds humanity to the workplace. Oh, the humanity. 79% said it increases employee relationships, other than those two guys and the one who didn't want to put down the food, right? And then 75% said it helps the organization instill and reinforce corporate values in its employees. So I show you that slide because I do think it's valuable. I do think employee recognition programs are valuable. I do believe that interventions and strategies to help improve engagement are valuable and worthy. But perhaps we got it flipped around wrong. Perhaps we may be putting the cart before the horse. And as I go through today, I just want you to keep on thinking about this. Well, what about your organization? Where do you fit in? Do you think that your employment engagement strategies are EnCAGEment strategies or engagement strategies? And so my session goals for you today. Number one is to understand the difference between EnCAGEment strategies and engagement strategies. And as an HR professional, one of the things that I want to say to you is if you do not personally take anything away from this, or if this is not hitting home to you, here's what I want you to do for me. I want you to at least not judge right off the bat, because you have children, you have nieces, you have nephews, you have coworkers, you have spouses. If this doesn't hit home with you, at least take this away so you can begin talking to those individuals that you love and you care about to have them think differently about the way in which they approach their careers and they approach work. The second thing is to explain the psychological enablers of employee engagement. I will talk to you some of the study that Dr. Khan did on engagement. And then apply at least 2 tactics to your engagement strategies. And that is my main takeaway for you as an HR professional. Of the things that we talk about today, see if you can take 1 or 2 things from this and be able to apply it to your workplace. Sounds fair? If that sounds fair, good. Let's go ahead and jump into this content and get started on down this path. And I'll start first with an interesting fact about employment engagement. Employment engagement derived from studies that begun in the 1920s concerning morale or the willingness of persons to accomplish organizational objectives. And if you think about it, morale is very strongly connected to employment engagement because we always like to take the pulse. It seems like morale is down. Well, morale needs to be up. How can we get morale up? During World War II, the United States Army's researchers studied morale as a predictor of unity of effort and attitudinal battle readiness. And when it says it studied morale, I want to take a pause here. I want to see if you all can recall what we were really focusing on before employment engagement came along. About 15 years ago, in the early 90s, maybe early 2000s, maybe even late 80s, we were looking at 2 particular things that are kind of similar to employment engagement, kind of similar. Do the words job satisfaction and organizational commitment ring a bell? Yeah, no longer are we looking at job satisfaction, organizational commitment. Now we're looking at employment engagement. We wanted to know or research actually did show that if an employee was satisfied with their job, they were more likely to be committed to the organization. However, a person could be committed to the organization, but not necessarily satisfied with their job. And so I know you probably had individuals talk to you about, what's the difference between loving the job that you have and having a job that you love. You can love the job that you have because all of the perks, all the benefits that come with it, the pay, right? But when you have a job that you love, it's totally different. And so the other interesting fact about employment engagement is eventually the term employment engagement was coined to describe a bundle of characteristics that were associated with high performers. And here we are in 2020 talking about employment engagement. And so those are some of a little background tidbits about employment engagement. So what about the numbers? What about the numbers? Gallup said that 33% of American workers are engaged by their job. 1/3 of American workers are engaged by their jobs. 52% say, hey, I'm just showing up. And for some of you, hey, we just need you here. That's all. That's the only thing you need sometimes, right? Just have them show up. 17% describe themselves as actively disengaged. And I laugh at that one because the 17% who are actively disengaged, they still took the time out to participate in an engagement strategy. And also, Gallup indicated that employment engagement is at a record low of 13%. So what about the money? What about the investment of employment engagement? Over $600 million is lost in productivity, according to Business Solver. Executives say enhancing employment engagement is one of their top 5 global business strategies, according to SHRM. Top 5. I mean, it's up there with customer service. It's up there with shareholders. Shareholders or your stakeholders. I'm sorry. It's also up there when you're talking about profitability and revenue. One of their top 5. And then, according to Harvard Business Review, over $720 million is being spent on engagement and is predicted to rise to $1.5 billion. And I wouldn't be surprised right now if it's already exceeded $1.5 billion. So 33% are engaged, 52% just showing up. It is at a record low of 13%. It's one of the top 5 business strategies, and it's predicted to rise to $1.5 billion. So you tell me, why isn't the needle moving? And according to research, it's been like that at a record low for the last 10 years, last 5 to 10 years. So when you put money, invest money, normally you see an increase. So what's going on? What is going on? And that's the reason why I want you to think about that. Go back to that question. Are my employment engagement strategies really to engage employees or to keep them happy, complacent, and satisfied? You even have some individuals who say employment engagement is just a fad. I'm not here to say that it is. But because the needle is not moving, it's stuck. Perhaps that's the reason why they're making that suggestion. Yes, 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 yes. I know that is probably the most dramatic opening to an activity that you'll ever have, right? But I have to do something to keep y'all engaged. And remember, I am from Kentucky, so y'all is a word. And in a moment, I'll show you proof that y'all is a word. But here's what I want you all to do. We've talked about, we begin the kind of beginning stages, talked about the beginning stages of employment engagement. We looked at the numbers, asked you that food for thought. I have the session goals and gave you a little bit of background. Now, what I want you all to do, because I'm pretty sure that most of you have a program in place in your organization that deals with employment engagement. And what I want you to do is get that same piece of paper out, get that same pen out, and I want you to generate a list of things that your organization is doing to move the engagement needle. All right. After you create that list of, let's say, 3, I want you to circle the one that you think has had the greatest impact on your employment engagement strategy or the needle moving. And also, then I want you to even just think about, write down, what do you think is the major challenge with employee engagement? Why do you think the needle is not moving? All right, generate that list, check or circle which one you think has the greatest impact, and then identify what do you think is the major challenge with employment engagement. And what I'll do is I will give you all a minute to do that, and I will see you all back in a minute. Yeah, nothing like the smooth sounds of Bob James and foreplay. Give you some time to think about some things during this engagement activity. And hey, just to prove to you all that y'all is a word, in my city, Florence, we have a water tower, and this is what the water tower says. It says Florence, y'all. So just to let you know, that is my proof that y'all is a word. Yes. Thank you. It's always one. Anyway, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So I asked you all to generate a list of things that your organization is doing to move the engagement needle, also to check or circle the one that has the greatest impact, and then to identify, what do you think is one of the major challenges with employment engagement. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of give you some things to think about. Maybe you did generate some of these things on the list, and I just want to go over a few. So here are some engagement activities that you're probably aware of, or that you may not be aware of, that may be new to you, because I know some of these were new to me. One is have the employee of the month. I know we just had Anna who had employee of the year. Feedback. Employees feel better about taking feedback or giving feedback. TGIF meetings, haven't heard about this. Thank God it's Friday or thank God it's food to engage employees. And you know what, on that one, I think I have a laugh track if you all can see my screen. Regular potlucks, we can't do potlucks unfortunately anymore because of the situation with COVID, but bringing in food or maybe a pizza party could be helpful. Work from home policy. I know some of you all probably are like my organization, where we actually had to pivot and begin letting individuals work from home, those who were able to. Celebrate milestones. Yeah, celebrate office and work anniversaries, birthdays, childbirth, whatever it may be, just to show that you are really, really thinking about the employees. First day welcome cards, for new hires, this is part of the orientation process. I know some organizations have their managers actually come and have lunch with some of their employees. That could be an engagement activity. Volunteering for a cause. I know our organization is very heavily invested in the community, and one of the things that most of our associates are involved in is volunteering for causes. Nap time, we would love, this has been out there for a long time in American culture, but we never have done it, being able to take a nap. While some people may sleep on the job, I guess it's not the same thing. Meditation to manage stress. What we have in our organizations, we do have a massage chair. We have a massage chair. We charge $1 a minute for up to 20 minutes just to relieve some of that stress. 15 office trips. Actually, our leadership team was going to take a trip to Hilton Head to begin our strategic planning session this year. But of course, we couldn't do that. That would have been my first time in Hilton Head too. Silly trophies, and this next one, anxiety party. Never heard of it. It was something that was thought of from Google. And really, what it is that you get people together who are anxious about something about their work, and they just bring it and they talk about it in that party. Anxiety parties. Never, it makes me anxious even just thinking about that. Bring your pet to work day. Yes, I don't know if snakes still make that make that list or not, but bring your pet to work day could be an engagement activity that you all use. Celebrate Diversity Day, just to appreciate all the various diversity you have in your organization. Training and development sessions, again, developing and growing your employees is always big. Peer-to-peer recognition. One of the things that we have in our organization, we have a system where peers can appreciate, send cards, send letters, even thank you cards to even our senior executives. And so that's one of the things that we are focusing on to make sure that we are creating those networks within our organization. And then, yes, the importance of onboarding just to bring up our brand new employees in the organization so they can get acclimated to our environment. So those are some of those engagement activities. If you wrote down any of those, give yourself a pat on the back. If you want to, give yourself 100 points for getting that right. Oh, and I can't forget about t-shirts. Why do we love t-shirts? We do anything for t-shirts. I have started turning down t-shirts because I have so many in my gym bag. But why do we love t-shirts so much? I don't know. Well, so as far as some of those things that kind of work, that was the second question I asked you. And according to Sherm, they said there are some conditions for engagement. And the ones that rank the highest that need to be in place, they found out that it was relationship with coworkers, and also opportunities to use skill and ability. And both of those were at 77%. And then you go down to the work itself, the meaningfulness of the job, the overall corporate culture as we move down the list, job specific training, network opportunities. That doesn't rank as high. But when you think about the conditions for employment engagement, the two that really are highly important are the relationships, or is the relationship with coworkers, and also opportunities to use their skills and ability, both at 77%. So the last question I asked you, the third question I asked you was, what do you think is the major challenge of employment engagement? And what I'm doing right now, I'm going to show you some information from a guy named Jacob Morgan. He wrote a couple of books, and he's called a futurist. And he identified 5 things or 5 challenges with employment engagement. And some of you all may have wrote some of these down, and this may be new information to you, but I think it's very interesting to kind of list or hear some of the challenges that he identified with employment engagement. And the first one he identified was engagement measures downward, not upward. And what he's talking about here is when we look at engagement, when we measure engagement, we look at if they're actively disengaged, they're not engaged, or they're engaged. And he said what is wrong with measuring this way is because when you think about the engaged employee, that engaged employee is really average, right? But what about those other individuals on that higher end of the scale? What about the individuals who are engaged who go 100%? What about the individuals who are engaged who are performing at a miraculous higher level, right? He said because then that's how we can measure some things. But one of the things we're doing right now is we measure downward and not upward. Interesting the way which he put that. Number 2, engagement has become the new annual review. Yes, and you know what happens when we do annual performance reviews? How many times a year? Annually, which means once. And I don't know how often that you all look or measure engagement. Some of you all may do pulse surveys, but we do it every other year. But he says when it comes to people issues, when it comes to things that are impacting human beings, we have to be continuous with it. We cannot do it just once a year. And that's what he means by engagement has become the new annual review. And I don't know how many of you all have really thrown away the annual performance reviews either. But he said we need to be continuous about about engagement and also the surveys. Number 3, engagement tends to look at the cause and not, excuse me, the effect and not the cause. Tends to look at the effect and not the cause of employment engagement. Number 4, he says surveys tend to be too long. The one I just took about 2 weeks ago, I want to say it took me approximately 20 minutes to take it. So if he says that surveys can be up to 100 or maybe even more questions. And I'll come back to talk to you something interesting that he said about surveys tend to be too long. And number 5, engagement acts as an adrenaline shot. And I really, really like this. When you think about morale, what we were talking about earlier, when morale is low, we got to do something. We got to give them a shot. Hey, let's give away t-shirts. Hey, how about t-shirts? What about let's have a potluck? Let's have a picnic. Let's have an outing. Let's do something just to get an adrenaline shot, just to show that the organization is really thinking about or really wants to keep the employees happy, complacent, satisfied, and keeping them from leaving. We don't want the 72,000 people complaining about their job. So let me go back to number 4. Surveys tend to be too long. In his article that he wrote in Inc., he says, if you want to find out whether or not your employee is engaged or not, he said, just ask them, right? Are you engaged? Yes or no? And you could find out whether or not an employee is engaged. I don't know if it's that simple, but that's what he came up with. So those were the list. There was a list generated, different activities, challenges, and also the ones that you think have the biggest impact. So one of the things that I haven't done now yet is really describe what employment engagement is. Really haven't gave you a definition of what it is. And what I'm going to do is just go over a couple of these definitions of employment engagement. And I want to see if you can identify a theme within these definitions. And the first one is from SHRM. SHRM says that employment engagement is the connection and commitment employees exhibit towards an organization, leading to higher levels of productive work behaviors. That was SHRM. The Employment Engagement Network, they said employment engagement is when an employee has a rational, emotional, and motivational connection with the company. Hewitt Associates, I don't know if you all heard about the Say, Stay, and Strive model, but it is when an employee is emotionally and intellectually committed to the organization or group as measured by these three primary behaviors. Say, whether the employee consistently speaks positively about the organization to coworkers and potential employees and customers. Stay, the employee has an intense desire to be a member of the organization despite opportunities to work elsewhere. And strive, the employee exerts extra effort and exhibits behaviors that contribute to business success. That's Hewitt and Associates. So let me kind of go back here, see if you all can identify a theme with these three various definitions. Connection, commitment, rational emotional connection to the company. Say about the organization, whether they're going to stay with the organization, contribute to the business success. If you identify a theme, just hold on to it, because now I want to introduce you to Dr. William Kahn's definition of employment engagement. He says employment engagement is where workers are highly absorbed in the performance of their work. Highly absorbed in the performance of the work. What is the difference here between this definition of Dr. Kahn and the definitions of Hewitt and Associates, the Employment Engagement Network, and SHRM? If you identified that SHRM's Employment Engagement Network and Hewitt Associates are focused on the organization and Kahn's is focused on the employee, you're correct. So this is where I think why the needle is not moving with employment engagement is because we tend to focus on the inputs of the organization rather than the inputs of the employee. Inputs of the organization, things that the organization is doing to keep them committed to the organization, stay, strive, those types of things, rather than the inputs of the employee, what the employee really brings to the table. Because again, that goes back to what I said earlier before. It's a difference when you have a job that you love. You're highly absorbed in the performance of your work. And we're going to talk more about this now because that's where we get into the meat of this presentation. And I talked to you about the psychological enablers as far as one of the goals here. And through his research, Dr. Kahn identified 3 psychological enablers to employment engagement. And they are meaningfulness, safety, and availability. And in each one of these, he talks about this thing called full self. It goes back to when an employee is highly absorbed in the performance of the work. Meaningfulness. Does the employee find the work meaningful enough to warrant engaging their full self? Safety. Does the employee feel safe bringing their full self to work without risk of negative consequences? And availability. Does the employee feel mentally and physically able to harness their full self at this particular moment? Those are the enablers, and I like the full self piece. And again, we're going to dive deeper into this. Employees are being highly absorbed in the performance of the work and also the full self. And what I did was I went out and looked at a couple of employment engagement surveys because I really got kind of curious about, well, what is on some of these surveys? And I took a look at the Federal Employee Viewpoint Employment Engagement Index. And this isn't everything that's on the survey, but I just took like the first couple of ones that I could pull off, and I bolded a couple of them just to kind of give you an understanding, because many of these are probably similar to what you see on your employment engagement surveys. Number one, my organization leaders maintain a high standard of honesty and integrity. Again, focused on the leadership there. People don't leave organizations, they leave managers. Managers communicate the goals and priorities of the organization. Again, a little bit of leadership there. Management also, you have communication of the goals of the organization. Number five, I have a high level of respect for my senior leaders. Again, very focused on the management. I know what is expected of me on my job. Again, talking about the role there, a little bit alignment between the organization and also a little bit about the employee. Number nine, I know how my work relates to the agency goals and also priorities, right? Really organization focused. Let me skip number 10 and go down to number 13. I have trust and confidence in my supervisor. Again, focused on leadership. And then take a look at number 10. Take a look at number 10. It says, my talents are used well in the workplace. My talents are used well in the workplace. Just told you I took my survey about 2 weeks ago, and I cannot recall if anything like this was in the survey that I took. And what about yours? Can you recall anything in there that talks about talents used well in the workplace? Again, not focusing on the inputs of the organization, looking at leadership, the goals, but focus on the inputs of the employee. My talents are used well in the workplace. And when we're talking about this employment engagement, I do want to let you all know that, hey, it's not HR's fault. When we're talking about the engagement, the talents, there's not a talent shortage. There is not a talent shortage. If anything, there may be a skill shortage, but there's definitely not a talent shortage. See, the educational process that all of us have went through have taught us workplace skills. Really, it taught us workplace skills from the beginning all the way to the end. And as we move further in our educational career, we got more specialized, right? There is not a talent shortage. Just think what would happen if the educational process was flipped upside down. Because right now, you have children. I went through the education process. We developed workplace skills so we could take our skills, give it to an organization who needs those skills so we could perform. But unfortunately, the focus was not us. Unfortunately, it was not about us. It was about the organization, because we're talking about talents, skills here. If the education system was flipped upside down and we began thinking about Angela, let's find out what Angela's talents are. Once we identify what her talents are, then we can identify a career that can use those, and then we can develop those skills. But now we have it switched around. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about that. Organization leaders have not been educated on prioritizing how to assess individual talents. Again, it's not your fault, HR. Many of the employee solutions are focused on retention management. Many of the solutions are focused on retention of their employees. And just to get back on that thing as far as the education goes, the National Center for Education Statistics they did a study and found of 25,000 students, nearly 1/3 of undergraduates who declared a major changed that major at least once within 3 years of initial enrollment. And I can testify for that. I changed my major 4 times in undergrad, twice when I was in grad school. And what is going on here, guys, is that we have individuals who identified a program or a major that they were highly skilled in, but didn't necessarily use their talents. Again, we do not have a talent shortage. If we think about the education system differently, we can identify your talents first, then your skills second. But what we're doing now, we're finding individuals in our organization, 72,000 of them, if you go back to the commercial, who are unhappy. And I believe that the reason why individuals are unhappy, the reason why individuals are not engaged is because they're not able to bring their full self. They're not able to execute their talents on a daily basis. It took me 38 years to realize what I am very talented in. And I just so happen to be in the field of learning and development where I'm able to bring my full self, my talents, and also the skills that I've acquired over the years in order to be engaged in my work. And how do you do that? Right? I'll tell you how to do that in a moment because I love it when Harvard Business Review makes me right. They said that most employment engagement models are centered around the work experience and not the employees. We need to begin focusing more on the employee, the inputs of the employee, not the inputs of the organization. And one of the ways in which we can do this is by, first of all, I'm sorry, getting ahead of myself because I'm really engaged in this. But there was a study that was that was conducted in the International Journal of Management Reviews, and they identified some antecedents of employment engagement, basically things that have to be in place before a person or an employee is engaged. And they are individual psychological states, experience of job design related factors, basically looking at the workflow, ergonomics. Number three, perceived leadership and management. We already talked about this. We saw it in the survey. Number four, individual perceptions of organizational and team factors, basically the culture, the values, what the organization really stands for. And then number five, yes, this is what we're used to. This is what we know when it comes to employment engagement, are the organizational interventions or activities. Yes, t-shirts. But what do we mean by individual psychological states? Well, individual psychological states, what we're talking about here, high self-efficacy, person who has resilience, they have the personal resources in order for them to do their job, and they also have positive perceptions of themselves, of their personal strength and their ability. And this was positively associated with employment engagement. But look at this next bullet point. This next bullet point, it says, but organizational interventions and activities had a slightly weaker impact on engagement. But why are we doing all these interventions? Yes, why are we doing all these interventions and activities if it's having a slightly weaker impact on engagement? Are your organizational employment engagement strategies really strategies to keep employees engaged or keep them happy, complacent, and satisfied and keeping them from leaving? We need to focus on the inputs of the employee and not the inputs of the organization, according to research. So I was asked that question a little bit a while ago and asked the question and said, well, how do you do this? How do you really tap into the natural abilities, the talents, not the skills, the talents of our employees? And one of the things that you can do is take the Strength Finders assessment. Strength Finders assessment, it has 34 strengths that a person can fall into. You do a survey, it spits out a report of your top 5. And that can begin the conversation, if you will, to help people identify their strengths. And I could pretty much assure you, one of the reasons why we don't want to go down that road is because we don't want an individual to find out what they do well, the things that what their natural talent is, especially when it's not associated with the job and the role that they have right now. And don't let them be a top performer, because at that point in time, we can't let them leave. We need to find a way to keep them. If we lose this individual, yada, 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 all these different types of things. But begin finding out what your strengths are. And this is the reason why I said, if this doesn't hit you for yourself, hopefully you'll take something away to give to other individuals, such as your loved ones, your children who are in school, because you don't want to play major roulette and spin the wheel and try to figure it out. Because like I said, it took me 38 years for me to find out what my strength was. So here's what I want you all to do. I'm going to give you another minute here. Do you know the difference between a talent and a skill? A lot of people use them in the same voice. They think they're synonymous, but they're not. I want to see if you can detect what a talent and a skill is. I'll go ahead and give you 1 minute to do that. Oh yeah, the quiet storm, the quiet. That's my best DJ voice I can give you. I'm sorry about that. But were you able to detect the difference between a talent and a skill? I normally have this interaction with my group that whenever I do this presentation, and I tell them, I say, see if you can detect what my talent is or my talents are. And I would tell them I'm an author, I'm a speaker, I'm a regional speaker, I'm a national speaker. I have taught at the educational level, collegiate level. I'm also a trainer, been in the field of training and development for over 20 years. And I kind of stopped there and I asked, I said, what do you think my talent or my talents are? And what do you think I normally get? If you're thinking something around communication, 99% of the time, that's what I get. I always get something around communication, but I tell them, I said, communication is a skill. My ability to teach, my ability to present is a skill. I can teach you how to be a facilitator. I can teach you how to manage a learning environment. I can teach you how to utilize audio visual. I can teach you all those things that come with being a presenter. I said, but as far as my talent, I said my talents are my 3 P's. My presence, my positivity, and also my personality. Because let's start with personality. You can't teach a person to have a certain personality. They are who they are, and the older you get, the stronger, the more it gets ingrained in who you are. If you are a neat freak at the age of 8, you're going to be a neat freak at the age of 88. And I said presence. Have you ever heard someone say, you know what? It's like when they walk in the room, it's like the room just lights up. You can't teach presence, and you certainly can't teach positivity. People are so negative. You could say, oh my gosh, whew, I am so glad that today is Friday. And then you have that one person say, well, yeah, but Monday's 2 days away. You know, so, okay, I gotta throw my cue card in. That's when you're also, yeah, you can't teach that. So the difference between a talent and a skill is a skill can be taught and a talent cannot. Are your employment engagement strategies really to keep employees engaged or keep them from leaving complacent and being happy? And I love this quote from Tony Roberts. He says, success without fulfillment is life's ultimate failure. Success without fulfillment is life's ultimate failure. We need to be fulfilled in the role that we're participating in every single day, or at least more than half the time, right? We can't be out chasing the 4 P's, the power, the prestige, the position, and the payroll. We can't do that. If we do, we'll miss out on really who we are. We'll probably miss out on utilizing our talents, combining with the skills, so you could be the best performer that you can, so you could be fulfilled in your role. Success without fulfillment is life's ultimate failure. Employment engagement or employee engagement. So, what are these 6 tactics that I want you to consider regarding your employment engagement interventions and activities? Well, first one is selection. you do have some control over your selection, the way in which you interview individuals. I don't know if you're theoretical based. I don't know if you're behavioral based. I don't know if you use peer interviews, whatever it may be. But review your battery of interview questions to ensure or try to get some type of indication that we are selecting individuals who is going to be able to bring their full self to their job on a daily basis, utilizing their talents. Number two, suggest survey modifications to your employment engagement surveys if you're going to continue to do those. Ask questions specifically related to their exceptional strengths and talents. And that's what I love about the Strengths Finders. It identifies every strength. He says people who are exceptionally talented in X. Put something in there like I just showed you a moment ago. I'm able to utilize my talents in my role. And if you look up fulfillment, we just talked about fulfillment with Tony Roberts. If you look up the definition of fulfillment, it says when a person's talents, natural abilities, and talents are fully utilized. That's what we're talking about there. Coach your managers to become strength seekers, right? I don't know how hard would be. I don't know what type of input or feedback you would get, but if you were to quit today, what would you do? Even if you ask yourself this question right now, what would you do? Would it be something that you're doing right now, or would it be something totally different? How does this relate to your role right now? Whatever you will quit and do, how does it relate to your role? Are you able to utilize that talent in this area or in this role? Also, what about this one? How did you get into this field? I love asking this one, especially for our HR professionals. You can ask anyone right now, how did you get in HR? It's kind of like they just tripped into it. It just happened. Someone asked them if they would like to take a role, and then they became the VP of HR, right? But how did you get into this field? What are your natural abilities? What are your talents? Do you know the difference between your talents and your skills? I'm pretty sure if you ask most people, they would not know really what the difference was. Utilize Strength Finders 2.0. I already talked to you about that to help associates connect with their role, help them understand the difference between their talents and their skills. Number 5, job crafting, redesign their role. If it is something that the person really has a talent for or really has a natural ability of doing, build it into their role if you possibly can. So at least they'll become engaged or maybe even perform at a higher level than what they're doing right now. And then number 6 is career pathing. Career pathing is helping them reach their professional and also their personal goals. And one of the books that you could probably pick up is called The Dream Manager. I really love The Dream Manager. Read it about 15 years ago, and it was a book about really helping these employees reach their professional and also their personal dreams. It was very effective. And when I look back on number 5, redesign the job role, I recall a situation where I was coaching a nurse manager, and the nurse manager talked to me about one of her employees whose performance was waning, goes up and down, ups and down. And I helped her to help me understand, well, when was he at peak performance? And it turned out that when he was at peak performance, it was when he was training and educating new employees. So he had this talent of connection. He had this talent of building and growing and developing others. And what they did was they built that into his role. It was informal at first, but then it became formal. And I would like to say that his performance kind of maintained at a certain level after that. But these are the 6 tactics that I have for you to help improve or to connect with your employment engagement strategies. Again, because the food for thought was, are my employment engagement strategies really to keep them engaged or really to engage them so they do not leave the organization? And ladies and gentlemen, that is all I have for you today. Here's my reference page. I'm really happy that you all did join me today to talk about employment engagement or EnCAGEment, 6 tactics to unleash employment potential. My name is Dr. Davis Robinson, and I've enjoyed being with you here. Embrace the future.